July 1518, the city of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trophea steps out into the street and she starts to dance. No music is playing, no festival is happening. She simply begins moving alone in the middle of the road and she does not stop. Not after a few minutes, not after an hour. She dances through the afternoon. She dances into the night. Her feet begin to bleed inside her shoes, and still she keeps going. Neighbors watch in horror as she dances for one day, then two, then three, then four, then five, then six by. Day seven, Frau Trophea is still dancing, and something has started happening to the people around her. One by one, other townspeople begin dancing too. Not with her, not celebrating, but seized by the same uncontrollable compulsion. Within a month, contemporary accounts describe as many as 400 people dancing through the streets of Strasbourg all at once, none of them able to stop. This isn't folklore. This isn't a legend passed down and exaggerated. This event was recorded in real time by the physicians, priests, and city council of Strasbourg in documents that still exist today. It is one of the most thoroughly documented events of its kind in all of European history. And here's where it gets even stranger. The city's own doctors looked at what was happening and they came to a bone-chilling official diagnosis. They didn't think the dancers were possessed or faking or ill in any ordinary sense. They believed that dancers had hot blood and that the only cure was to dance even more. So the city built a wooden stage in the middle of the grain market. They hired musicians, they hired professional dancers to keep the afflicted moving. The official medical response to hundreds of people dancing themselves toward collapse was to turn up the music. Some later chronicles claim that at the peak of the event, people were dying from exhaustion and heart failure, several a day, dropping from strokes and sheer physical collapse, still moving their feet as they died. So here's the question that should be keeping you up tonight. What actually causes hundreds of human beings to dance uncontrollably for days, sometimes to the point of death, with no music, no reason, and seemingly no way to stop? And here's the part that should really worry you. This isn't only a medieval mystery, it has happened again, more than once, and the most recent version of it may be happening right now, on a phone, in a bedroom near you. For centuries, the leading theory for what happened in Strasbourg was a poison, a fungus called ergot, which can grow on damp rye bread and which can genuinely cause hallucinations and violent muscle spasms in people who eat it. For a long time, this felt like the tidy scientific answer. Bad bread, case closed. Except it isn't the answer. And once you hear why, you'll understand why historians largely reject it. Ergot poisoning causes convulsions, yes, but it also constricts your blood vessels so severely that it can cause gangrene, rotting flesh, and burning pain in your hands and feet. It leaves you in agony, barely able to stand, let alone sustain coordinated, rhythmic dancing for hours or days at a time. Ergot poisoning does not organize 400 separate people into the same repetitive, dance like movement, spreading gradually from person to person over the course of a month. Poison doesn't recruit new victims one by one as they watch someone else get sick. This did. So if it wasn't in the bread, it had to be somewhere else. And a historian named John Waller, who has studied this event more closely than almost anyone alive, points to something that sounds at first impossible to believe. He argues the real cause of the Strasbourg dancing plague wasn't physical at all, it was psychological, and it was contagious. To understand how, you have to understand exactly what Strasbourg was like in 1518. This was not a random year, it was one of the worst years the city had experienced in memory. Famine had struck, bread prices had spiked out of control, disease was spreading, smallpox and syphilis were killing people in the streets. On top of all of that, the people of this region held a genuine, deeply rooted folk belief in a curse associated with a figure called Saint Vitus, who was said to be able to punish sinners by cursing them with uncontrollable dancing until they died. Now picture the psychological pressure cooker that creates a population that is starving, terrified, grieving, and already primed by their own culture to believe that a curse of compulsive dancing was a real and plausible punishment waiting to happen to them. Under exactly those conditions, Waller argues the mind can do something almost unbelievable when a person is under extreme, prolonged psychological stress, and they also deeply believe in a specific supernatural affliction. Their body can begin to involuntarily enact that exact affliction, not faking it, not choosing it. Their nervous system essentially short circuits under the unbearable weight of stress and fear, and it expresses that internal breakdown through the one channel. Their culture had already primed them to expect uncontrollable dancing, and then it spreads. Because watching another human being lose control of their own body in front of you, especially when you already fear that exact fate, is one of the most psychologically contagious experiences imaginable. One terrified, exhausted mind breaks in a very specific way. The people around her, already carrying their own unbearable stress, watch it happen, and some of their minds break in the very same way. It moves through a crowd like a virus, except the thing spreading isn't a germ. It's a shared belief, a shared fear, replicating itself from nervous system to nervous system. Today, doctors have a real name for this. It's called mass psychogenic illness, and here is the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. This is not some extinct medieval phenomenon that could never happen in the modern world. It has happened again, multiple times, in documented, filmed, thoroughly investigated modern history. In 1962, in a girls' boarding school in what is now Tanzania, three students started laughing uncontrollably. It wasn't ordinary laughter, it didn't stop. And within days, it had spread to over 90 other students at the same school. The laughter epidemic then spread outward to neighboring schools and villages, eventually affecting an estimated 1,000 people and forcing 14 different schools to shut their doors. Grown adults, teachers, entire communities watched children convulse with laughter they could not control for days at a time, with no infection, no drug, nothing in the water, just fear, stress, and proximity, doing to a village in 1962 exactly what it did to a city in 1518. Now, fast forward to 2011, in the small town of Leroy, New York, over a period of months, around 20 students at the local high school, almost all of them teenage girls, began developing sudden, severe tics, verbal outbursts, full body jerking movements. Some had seizure like episodes. Doctors ran every test imaginable, searching for an environmental cause, a toxin, an infection, anything physical. They found nothing. What they eventually concluded, and what researchers now cite as one of the first cases of its kind, is that this outbreak had spread not through water or air, but through something new, a social network. Teenage girls who spent time together, who watched each other's symptoms, who absorbed each other's fear, unconsciously passing the same affliction along, the exact same way it moved through Strasbourg 500 years earlier. And now, we arrive at the version of this happening in your own decade. Starting around 2021, doctors around the world began noticing something strange. A sudden sharp rise in teenage girls developing sudden onset tics, remarkably similar to Tourette's syndrome, but with one crucial difference. These new cases were appearing instantly, in teenagers, seemingly overnight. Researchers dug into it and found something extraordinary. In study after study, a huge majority of these girls, in one investigation as many as 68%, reported the exact same thing before their symptoms began. They had been watching videos on TikTok of other people, often specific influencers, displaying similar tics and symptoms. The affliction wasn't spreading through a school hallway anymore. It was spreading through a screen, in the palm of a hand, jumping from a bedroom in one country to a bedroom in another, in seconds, with no physical contact required at all. The mechanism is precisely the same one that moved through Strasbourg in 1518. A brain under real, often invisible stress, exposed to a vivid example of someone else's nervous system breaking down and unconsciously beginning to enact the exact same pattern. We didn't outgrow this, we just gave it broadband. So think about what that actually means. The dancing plague was never really about dancing. Frau Trofea was never cursed by a saint. Those 400 people in Strasbourg didn't have poisoned bread, and the schoolgirls in Tanzania didn't have a virus. And the teenagers on TikTok didn't have a new form of Tourette's. Every single one of these events was the same human mechanism, expressing itself through whatever symbol the surrounding culture had already handed it. Curse about dancing in a village that believed in curses about dancing. Laughter in a school, tics in an era that had just watched millions of videos of exactly that. The costume changes, the engine underneath it never has. And here is the part worth sitting with long after this video ends. Your mind is not the fortress you think it is. It is deeply, involuntarily wired to absorb the emotional state of the people around you, especially when you are exhausted, afraid, or under pressure you can't fully name. For most of history, that wiring only reached as far as your own village. You needed to stand next to someone to catch what they were carrying. Today, you don't. Today, next to someone can mean a stranger on the other side of the planet, and the exposure isn't limited to one afternoon in a town square. It's available every waking hour, endlessly in your pocket, which means the real danger was never a curse, or bad bread, or a mysterious virus. It was always this specific ancient combination, real, unspoken stress, and a vivid example right in front of you of what that stress can look like when it finally breaks through. Strasbourg had a town square. You have a feed that never stops scrolling. None of this means you're destined to catch whatever's spreading online, any more than everyone in Strasbourg started dancing. Most people then and now don't, but understanding the mechanism is its own kind of protection. Because a contagion, whether it moves through a crowd in 1518 or a comment section in this decade, always spreads best in the dark when nobody understands what's actually happening to them. The moment you can name it, stress, fear, and a vivid example, waiting for a nervous system that's already run out of room, it loses a piece of its power over you. Frau Tropfe danced alone for a week before anyone else joined her. Whatever is spreading through the crowd you're standing in, online or off, probably started the exact same way. One person, quietly overwhelmed, expressing a breaking point in the only language their world had taught them. The rest of us just have to decide whether we're close enough to catch it. Because everything has a why. Even the strangest, most impossible looking events in human history. And now, 500 years later, you finally know theirs. Before you go, one small thing. Videos like this take a lot of digging, real documented history, real research, real modern studies, not just guesses. And I bring it all together so you don't have to. So, if this made history feel a little more unbelievable and a little more relevant to right now, the like button and the subscribe button are right there. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel more than you know. And this whole channel runs on one question: why? So tell me in the comments, what's the next why you want answered? Why do we get deja vu? Why does music give you chills? Why do we panic in crowds? Whatever it is, drop it below. The best one might just become the next video, because everything has a why. And I'll see you in the next one.